So a 25-point victory it will be. Win number 6 for Port. It keeps them barely in contention, moves them to 10th place. And you've got to think Melbourne are just about done now. Port Adelaide, right, 25 points.
Alrighty, hello, welcome to the CREEDCAST. My name's Dave, and as always, thank you for joining us wherever you may be consuming the content. It's another great week to be doing this as well. My no be a no and my yes be a yes. Your Port Adelaide Football Club won a tough but impressive battle against the Melbourne Demons, led by Mitch Georgiades, much like US Marine. John Basilone at Guadalcanal in World War II, leading his undermanned machine gun nest to hold the line against a vastly numerically superior Japanese force, earning the Medal of Honor. George didn't read the headlines of our undermanned forward line either, and he led the charge to our win, ably supported by many performances around the ground, though. 14-9, 93 to 9-14, 68, a nice, almost palindromic scoreline. And no promissory notes from the AFL. We have our 4 points in the bag. Jamie, it was tough, but I came away pretty fucking proud of our boys after the weekend. That was a bloody good Sunday session at Adelaide Oval.
Dave, we're on a roll. How you going? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, mate.
Yeah, no worries. It's my pleasure. Thanks everyone for tuning in, listening, watching, whatever your proclivities may be. But I look, a few neck oils just to kind of add to the drama of the afternoon/evening. And I don't know about you, but I kind of came out of the blocks a bit harsh in retrospect of my spectatorship, but it was a challenge. We overcame a little bit of adversity, and it ended up being quite an entertaining game of football on our side of the fence, particularly. So definitely looking forward to discussing every which way about it.
Yeah. I think the harshness comes from just a little bit of that, I guess, PTSD.
Trepidation.
Yeah, the season that's been so far, some of the, when you see those little signs of mistakes creeping in at certain parts of the game, and even like after the game, we were walking out and heading towards the bridge, and I think I said to you and Aaron and Cooper, and shout out to those boys as well. I kind of leaned over and went, Mitch could have had 8 today still, though, couldn't he? Like, we were all like, this is great. And I felt bad for saying it because obviously we love the performance and it's incredible and we will talk about it. But I was just like, fuck, he could have had 8. He could have had 9. He could have had 10. Like, it was an incredible performance.
Yeah, he had a press conference today and
I haven't been.
It got brought up. It got brought up like, oh, yeah, do you feel like you left a few out there? I think he might have said it as well. And
it was,
yeah, we all know it, but just happy to see him on the positive end of the ledger of what his total ended up being. 7 goals, 4. It's an amazing effort, but yeah, I know. It's funny how you look at things in the moment, and then after it's all said and done, it's just like, could have won a few more contested possessions if you ask me, but it's still like, no, it was a great win. Bit of context, Melbourne, where they're at and whatnot, but it was a bit of a elimination final. I cringe a little bit when those types of connotations are applied to what was it, a round 14 game of football.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, Melbourne came to play, led by Max Gawn, and we were up for the challenge, which was pleasing.
Yeah. There was I think in the pre-match it was some great Dwayne stuff in the when I was watching the
there certainly was
in the KO replay, but in the pre-match when they were talking about the connotations of it being somewhat of an elimination final, he said the loser of this game, I think his quote was, the loser of this game needs to pair a mathematician with a psychologist or something like that.
That's right in the Dwayne lane.
Yeah, he just had that, like, the tone of his voice saying that, and I was just like getting the replay going. I was like, oh, this is going to be Dwayne's in second quarter form already, and it's pre-game, so he certainly had a few good ones. But yeah, I mean, the game, just in the generalities of it, I'm just scrolling down. Just for a few, actually, just on Mitch, he was one of the worst. Like, his X score was like minus still, even though he kicked 7 goals, which just kind of shows. And I think his X score was improved by some of the later shots, but an incredible performance, and we'll talk more about the forward line when we get to it. But I thought, just as a general stats point to start off, we, the D's were number one in contest. They win the contested ball pretty comfortably, but they're number one in contested possessions, number two in clearances, and number one in inside 50s across the last 6 rounds going into the game. Just a stat I took from the Fox, the pre-game. So this was a side we're coming up against that was pretty handy. Like their obvious big detriment that has been a part of their story for the last 5 years was the actual usage of the ball once it goes inside 50. But and we'll get to the defensive effort as well. But I thought what we did with how we played the game helped mitigate a lot. We talked about it in the squad show, and shout out to everyone that's on Patreon and anyone that's not there, get on there because we do a show there every week as well, leading into the round. We talked about kind of mitigating the gaps of those certain areas where we know they're going to get a bit of domination. Certainly when we get to the midfield stuff, that was really good. But just the marking around the ground, the fact we took 123 marks for the game versus their 89, whereas they actually average 5 more a game than us. So we completely flipped the script on that, and marking just equals more controlled possession of the ball. And across the game, we had 47% possession versus their 38%. So we're able to mitigate the damage that they do with some of the contested stuff with just actually having more control of the game. And I thought that was really impressive that we did, again, like last week against GWS, we came in with a game plan to try to mitigate. We didn't stop some of the stuff they did. Petrarca had a little burst. Petrarca didn't have a great overall stats game. He had some bursts where he threatened to try to take the game away with some clearance work. But just the way we game planned, again, was real. I found it like, obviously on the day you're kind of in the emotions of the game, but looking back at the stats and watching the replay, I was really, really impressed with how we game planned to find a way to get this result.
Yeah, again, similar sentiments to the GWS game in the fact that we got, another fantastic piece of the puzzle in JHF back. And funnily enough, it just added another layer to our overall performance. The game planning was interesting. Like you said, it looked like there was a few things out there on the field that we wanted to put to the test. But as well as that, I think our ball movement as a whole was a lot cleaner, a lot more innate. I mean, we lamented a handful of scenarios where that lingering over possession, just that final handball, and we were identifying it in real time. It's just like cancel that out. But overall, as the game wore on, I felt like our ball movement was a lot better. Our tackling pressure lifted. I felt that we perhaps didn't start as well as we could have in that regard. But again, built into the match, and it was death by 1,000 cuts. The pleasing aspect of it all, though, is that Melbourne did get their little runs going. We still faced a little bit of adversity throughout the game, but the more pleasing aspect of it is that every time we took a couple on the chin, we gave a few back, and we got inside their heads. We didn't let it negatively affect us too much, and it's why I love Zach Butters so much. And look, there's a pretty big party in that regard. But it was an interesting little battle between him and Jack Viney for most of the day. And where Zach, I feel, has the ability to just go at a player, but then still be able to focus on the task at hand. Whereas I think Jack Viney let a lot of frustrations get to him. So just the mental, physical, contested, non-contested aspect of it, I thought we ticked a lot of boxes. And you referenced the Patreon show where we discussed some of these things. And I find it so pleasing when we discuss certain aspects of what could happen, and then when they materialize, it is quite satisfying. Such as, Mitch outworking the defense, and we were lining up those pieces. Not to focus on any line in particular right now, but we spoke about their defense being strong, but the fact that the matchups could work in our favor when you line up who's potentially playing on who, and how that can be positively impacted on our end. Just a lot of ticks. Obviously, still keeping it within reason. GWS were in a bit of a flat spot, and I mean their win on the weekend maybe makes ours look a bit better. And then moving on to Melbourne, like I said off the top, their season has not been anywhere near where they would want it to, but they're still filled with some very, very good footballers, and we know that very, very good footballers can turn the tide some way. But we had 23 contributors as far as I'm concerned, and when you have 23 contributors, it makes winning games of football a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I thought when you were mentioning things we mentioned on Patreon, I was like it's like a little pat on the back to talk when we talked about the possibility of Manny Liddy starting and bucking the trend of debutants because we were talking about maybe
Yeah.
maturity being a little bit more mature would lend itself to actually getting a start, and we'll talk about the midfield work and some of that in a little bit. But I thought he had a reasonable debut. Nothing spectacular, but some of his extraction work and some of those things, and just being
Hmm.
accountable was really really good. But I think it would be a good time to get into the lines because I just think, as you said, 23 contributors. There's so much to talk about within the lines. But one note as we get into the defense side first, which is going to be fun. Talking about our ball movement, score origin, we kicked 6 goals, 642 to their 3-4 22 from defensive half. So that's just something we haven't done as well a lot this year. So to see
Hmm.
that the win forward half scores were pretty similar, 5-2 32 for us versus their 5-8 38. They did when they got some work down the ground, they could use some of those stoppage bases and some of their domination in that sense. But we actually won from centre bounce as well. But particularly as we start talking about the defence and some of that ball movement, obviously some highlights in this game that I'm sure will come up later. But the defensive side was great. So much score generating from a large portion of our winning score being generated from the defensive half is fantastic. But I mean, you can't really start anywhere but big cab Sav. That's what
Mm.
we're trying to
Ah,
coin
the big
different.
cats. Yeah. Oh yeah, with you proclaiming that you what is it, you love Sav Blanc, and then we are just like, wait, no, no, no,
And
no one
I was
likes
just like,
Sav
wait,
Blanc.
what? No, I don't like that. And then you were like, cab Sav. And I was like, yes, that's what I like. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
so
the old Cab
excited. My
Sav.
brain wasn't working.
And to mark the occasion, that's exactly what I've got swirling in my glass right now. A
Perfect.
lovely Coonawarra Cab Sav. But yeah, where do you start without kind of getting all rosy cheeked and sparkly eyed about ESAVA?
Hmm.
As two fans of the football club that support in the way that we do, while not trying to pile shit on someone who may be underperforming or doing some silly things like we saw on occasions last year, but hoping for the best, hoping for incremental improvement, and just I think I mentioned it last week or the week before on one of the shows, just players taking steps up
Hmm.
more often than steps down. And I mean, Asava is probably the biggest embodiment of that out of our 2025 season. I mentioned earlier in the season this was just not long after his return to the side because obviously he started the season injured and then came back in. And I mentioned that out of anyone in our side now that Charlie is gone, he's probably the one that I trust the most in a marking situation. Maybe Bergman is probably on a similar
Hmm.
plane to that, but I mean, when you put a game together like he did, Asava this is on Sunday afternoon, I mean that just fills you with immense joy and pride that he's obviously put in a lot of work, and we're seeing far, far less mistakes. Like nothing this year really stands out to me, and it's his positioning is a whole lot better. His confidence to take those marks is a lot better. He doesn't seem to be interrupting his fellow defenders
Hmm.
and just making some forwards look a bit second rate, just on from a physical standpoint, because he is a behemoth of a man.
Yeah. He's fantastic to just watch move around, and he's actually deceptively quick as well. Quite athletic. Like there's a lot of attributes that are coming in
Hmm.
now that he's got the confidence, and he's been spoken about a fair bit over the last few days. Like he's now got the confidence to kind of go with the position. Um, the way he's moving on the field, just you kind of he's been our best defender the last 2 weeks. And we maybe talk about the fact that Melbourne don't have a defined forward line, but they've got threats down there. But in particular, when you kind of look at what GWS did with Hogan kicking 6 and Cadman kicking 5. And this goes for the whole defensive unit as well. We just played against those two last week. So it's not like they've come into form, and Cadman's kind of had threatened up and down. But Hogan's a Coleman medal winner and had been up there again this year with some performances. So the fact that ESAVA and Co did what they did last week against GWS, who just went and beat the defending premiers at their home ground with their two big forwards kicking a bag of 11 between them, is kind of testament to what they again did against Melbourne. They frustrated Melbourne. No one really got off. Like, again, they don't have the threats of a Hogan and Cadman, but you have to. You can only play who's in front of you, and they do have, reasonable inside 50, and not reasonable entries, but they get entries. They just
reasonable amount of entries.
Yes. Sorry, that's where I was trying to go. I was like, well, how do I word this? Because they weren't great, and they were talking about it in the commentary as well. Like, but yeah, it's it
was very Bomber to Dixon-esque without a Charlie Dixon type in the Melbourne forward line, which was pleasing for me to see on the other side of the ledger, watching us, whether it be through the pressure that we're putting on, obviously that was a bit better throughout the game, or otherwise, or just the sheer lack of kicking efficiency or finesse, I guess you could say, in the Melbourne midfield, which has been highlighted in the aftermath of it all. But yeah, it was nice to see them kind of giving SAV and some others a bit of a layup, if you want to put it that way, just right in his wheelhouse, a nice high ball playing against medium forwards, which we did discuss was a potential for us to kind of exploit, because we went into this going, who's going to kick the score out of the two forward lines? And
well, it was Cozzy Pickett was the only one, really, wasn't he, when he got forward?
And that was predominantly in a half of football, but then from a goal standpoint, 5 minutes in the second quarter.
Yeah,
I think he kicked those two quick ones.
He kicked their opener as well, I think, in the first quarter. So he didn't have much. After half time.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but yeah, he was the only one that really kicked. I think Fritsch might have got a couple in the end, but he wasn't. You never felt like Fritsch was going to be a threat throughout the game, though, did you? Like, he was there, and you knew if you let him.
Did he really earn both of them?
There is also that. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
No. They got a lot of benefit from between. There's some of we did benefit from their turnovers as well, and we win the turnover, just shade the turnovers, or was it tied? I think I can't remember, but I know, again, as we talked about in the Patreon show, and I've talked about over the last couple of weeks, we just need to drag that turnover margin in. Yeah, we won the turnover battle by 1, so whereas some of those games we've been losing have been some big discrepancies in turnover. So we do live and die by our ball use, which is pretty obvious, but some teams, it can be mitigated, but we've tightened that up. And done, but just on the defensive side, that's getting a little bit forward. But ESAVA's led the line the last 2 weeks. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher's been a quality second in command, I guess, because I know we talked about Aaliyah, and Leah's been in great form to start the year. We thought he was a bit out of play, just kind of was a bit not lost, but he just didn't have to do as much last week and kind of got lost a couple of times. But this week he's injured halfway early in the second quarter, plays out the second quarter. Clearly hobbled. I didn't really notice from our vantage point I was just like kind of like, on the day, just, things are happening, and I didn't really notice until I watched the telecast just how hobbled he was. Still made that play on the line. That touched one on the line on one leg, I think, is actually really, really impressive in the context of him being injured. That hurt. And I'm surprised actually that he's not more seriously hurt in the wake of it with the injury report. But the fact that we go into the second half without Aaliyah, and they do have a period of dominance in that third quarter, and they're just they do get scoring shots. They're not quality shots. They do miss a couple pretty, gimmies, and that's part of their problem. But we've certainly had that plenty of times ourselves. I'm not going to cry over their spilt milk too much. We held the line despite being down a very, very, very major defender, and I think that's even more important in the context of the game. Didn't think about it too much on the day, but the fact that ESAVA didn't get as many intercept marks in the second half. They did try to move the ball better into the forward line, but they still just couldn't. And
away from him.
Yeah, exactly. But they still couldn't find. But via doing that, they still actually couldn't find very good opportunity. Yes, they squandered a couple, and maybe the dynamic of the game changes if they do kick a couple of those ones. But hey, the dynamic of the game changes if Mitch kicks 9 goals too as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we both missed pretty gimme chances. I think they maybe missed one more, but it's a 25-point margin at the end of the day. And I think the defense held up. And, we've talked about ESAVA and Thatcher. I think Jace Bergwijn had a fair decent amount of marks. Obviously, Bergman again. Rosie, and we haven't been full strength deep. Like, Lockie Jones has been out for the last few weeks. ESAVA had a period out for a few weeks ago. Like, we're still moving guys in and out based on injury, and we're still actually improving. Defense is improving quite significantly over the last, couple of weeks.
It looks solid. Like, it's as solid as you could hope for. Like you said, without Lockie Jones, and Sin is probably the one in the crosshairs a little bit for when Lockie Jones is available, and I note that he's a test this week. But even still, in saying that, Sin had his moments on the day that he can be proud of as well. He's probably the seventh best defender, because you're generally running a 7-man defense, including rotations. But it is quite a pleasure to watch our defense now shape up. And it's quite a rare luxury that I'm certainly not taking for granted. Just this unique ability to rotate Rosie and Bergman through half back and back pocket and through the middle. Not many sides can do that. And with both of them carrying one's a proven A grader, one's on his way, but showing their A grade attributes. Yeah, I mean, going into the season, expecting Huddersfield to just get us over the line each week, and now still consistently being happy with defense. Like we've said in some of those heavy losses, they don't tell the whole story from a scoreline point of view. We're still actually quite impressed with the defensive line, albeit having to soak up a lot of that pressure in some of those larger losses. But yeah, our rebound, our accountability, everything just seems to be ticking up, particularly after the bye too.
Yeah. It was, I mean, Sin took, and we took 14 contested marks for the game. Sin was 2 of them. Obviously, ESAVA with 4, and there's a couple of others in there. Obviously, Mitch as well. But he, was involved in he was well in the game, and yeah, as you said, 23 contributors. Like, even the ones lower down the list, and the ones that you do start looking at, if you do start getting some soldiers like Lockie Jones back, he certainly didn't do himself any disservice on the weekend. It's really it's intriguing in the sense that they did, the inside 50 not domination, but was marginally in Melbourne's favour. I think it was 54-48. I'm just scrolling up now, but that's what the number I've got in my head. 54-48. So they did marginally beat us on the inside 50s, but again, their entries just weren't great, because when you look down, go back down to, and we love X score a little bit more, but I do like it just as a measure as to where the game could have been if things go the way. And, we actually, our expected X score was just a shade under 100, 99.7. Theirs was 85.6. So even based on if Melbourne had kicked a few more of their chances and we kick ours, a true reflection of the game is maybe a 12-point win, is basically what X score is saying, which I'd probably agree. Like, I'd sit there and go, look, if they get that, if you look at it, I don't want to go back to the game and replay it and let them get those chances and see what happens. But if you look at it just as a binary thing like this and go, okay, if they kick their chances, we kick ours, we win by 12 points, that's probably reflective. But the fact we won by 25 points doesn't bother me. But that still shows that our defensive effort overall was good, in the sense that we were able to hold them to and actually, I think it was mentioned in the pregame as well, these games generally don't get high scores. Like, Port hadn't scored 100 points in a long time against Melbourne, I think. And we actually, I think that our score of 94 in the end, with a couple of those rushed, obviously, 93, was a fairly good. I think the effort actually is really, really good, considering I've had some trouble scoring, considering the forward line. I don't know, I'm going to forward line jumping quickly, but I should get back to Melbourne's back line. But I think it's just a good effort that we were able to hold them to a lower score. You've got, between the last 2 weeks, we've held some pretty good what I think are two pretty good sides. Yes, they're struggling a little bit up and down. Melbourne obviously have had some good wins, bad losses, whatever have you. I think on paper they're two very good sides that have held to reasonably low scores on the defensive end. And I think that X score kind of, they missed a few chances they should have kicked, but I think it's also does show that a defensive effort has made it harder for teams. Like ESAVA's influence in that first half, the butterfly effect of that is they had to try to get it. They weren't probably expecting, a few weeks ago, if they were looking ahead a few weeks, they're going, oh, we're not going to have to worry about ESAVA. But then at halftime, they're like, fuck, we've got to work a way to not bring ESAVA into the game.
Yeah.
They've had Lear go out of the game at halftime. That's usually what all teams are going, oh, fuck, your Lear's out of the game. Yeah, everything's golden. And now they're having to work around ESAVA. So it's just like the fact that we've got that effort together and that group together, I think is really, really, really impressive. And something Port fans probably weren't expecting a few weeks back even as well.
Absolutely not. No. And yeah,
I know I
I've
just
said
went
it.
out like multiple tangents then, and you were probably like your brain's dreaming trying to catch up. So I apologize. I'll let you.
No. I just, as fans of football, and it's probably not even us, but like I've said before, our fan base and our club is all I really care about. But
Mhm.
it just shows that we're all very quick to judge, or not, a lot of us are quick to judge people, and there's a lot of commentary out there about bringing new players into squads and helping them gel, giving them time to gel, giving them time to learn the game plan, and it's not a flick of the switch. Hawthorn are a good example of that this year with
Mhm.
the fact that they've brought in their two defenders, and the chat during trade period is always, how much better are these sides going to be by bringing in these players. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of, if you're a good side, a lot of that is organic.
Mhm.
And then when you're bringing pieces in, a lot of the time they take time to blend. There's outliers like there is in every other aspect of life, but Bailey Smith is a fairly decent example of someone who's just come in and hit the ground running, but more
Mhm.
often than not, it takes a bit of time, and Asava was always a project, but we stuck fat. He's had two full preseasons now, and things are looking a lot better. Zerk Thatcher surprised us last year, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to see what a second preseason would have netted him early, particularly in the first half of this year. And as a just a background to that as well, just the trust, sorry, that I guess we have in our recruitment staff, and a lot of the trepidation from others doubting our recruitment staff. I've said it multiple times on this show, like more often than not, they get it pretty well right, and it's up to them to get these pieces in, but then it's up to our coaches and development staff to help them improve, blend, gel, whatever word you want to do. So it's just super super pleasing,
Mhm.
and long may it continue, as we always say.
Yeah. I wanted to, if you have anything else in defense before we finish up on it, go for it. But one thing I wanted to touch on, because I think it's an interesting player, and it's kind of where my watch comes from. But I'm also like, he didn't have a terrible game, but I think the enigma that is Ryan Burton was it. We saw both sides of it in this game. It was highlighted
Mm.
in the watching of the game. Well, with two of his effort, I mean, that effort, like that Cozzy Pickett goal, he should get to. And I think there was another one that hit the post. So there's twice in the game where he's just kind of shows an overconfidence in the ball watching, and one of them actually does end up in a goal in the Cozzy Pickett one that was nominated for goal of the week this week. Just the ball watching, that's the stuff, because I like Ryan Burton as a player. I've lauded him at times in the past, and I'm a little bit cooler on his prospects going forward, but I still think he's an incredibly talented athletic footballer. It's just that stuff within a game. But he still had 26 disposals, running at 76 odd percent, 450 meters gain. Like, there's a lot of stuff to like about what he did on the day. And I think overall, the plus minus of it, he had absolutely a plus and a reason that we won. As you said, 23 contributors. I was almost going to say maybe I don't do a watch this week, but I think it is just something to watch. Is like just the enigma that is his game at this present time and his career at the Port Adelaide Football Club is just like he can have a game like that where he has 26 touches, 7 marks, like 450 gained, running at every 3 out of 4 disposals efficient, like really good numbers. But then you go, well, fuck, just fucking don't watch the ball, like don't be confident in what you think the ball's going to do. Because I think I said to you in the stands, I was just like, this is the thing. This is the wonders of the Sharon is that it will do whether it's by ground, the Angus
Yeah.
Humphrey situation, or just through the air. Players like can manipulate it through the air and make it do the things they want to do. And that Cosy Pickett goal was a prime example of it. But we saw him kind of hold up for a second and then burst again because he realized it was.
It was like he expected. It's like he thought off the boot that it was going through the behinds.
Yeah,
Regardless of the fact that Cozzy's kicked a check side effectively on that point.
incredible effort.
Um,
Yeah. A lot easier to say that
yeah,
after we've won
curled
the
it in
game.
perfectly.
Yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
So a lot easier to say after we've won the game. So
Yeah. Well, we had the perfect view angle of that
unfortunately,
goal, and yeah, look, classy. Of course, you got to pay credit to the kick. Yeah, and I mentioned going hard early in the first quarter in terms of passion and criticism all melding into one
Mhm.
early, and rare. I'm typically like to put across the fact that, particularly first quarter, second quarter, first half, there's no point getting upset really, because you've still got the rest of the game to play out. Typically,
Mm.
obviously, yeah, if you're 10 goals down at quarter time or something like that, yeah, you've probably got a lot of reason to be quite furious. But so Ryan Burton, yeah, he had that little excursion on the wing early in the first quarter, and I think, yeah, he'd want that situation back. And I just remember screaming out, pathetic, because he kind of just like, yeah, let the ball roll on and kind of half-heartedly attacked it in the moment. But
Mm.
I think I've definitely, since watching the replay with the nerves settling, I think
He was involved in a
with
lot of good stuff.
Burton.
Like that's
He was.
yeah.
He actually had a really good game. It's just a case of a bit of the ESAVAs from last year. It's just
Mm.
some of those poor moments are highlighted, particularly with the lynch mob is probably a heavy-handed way to put it, but out on social media, highlighting his poor efforts or poor
And
moments. And I
unfortunately, that's
think
what the mindset of some people of who they think Burton is.
I
That's
think we
what they,
crave perfection out
yeah.
of Burton, is what I was going to say.
Mm.
I think a lot of people, and it may have something to do with the fact that, we gave up Wingard for him and Dersma with that pick, who's now gone. So he's kind of the last hope for us Port supporters to say, we won that trade. We won that trade. Bro, just believe us. We won that trade.
Well, I mean, Zerk Thatcher's
While
back,
we're
so it continues,
while we're
right?
tears are
Yeah.
streaming from our face. But yeah, I think unfortunately for Ryan Burton, he's yeah, us supporters of Port Adelaide crave perfection out of him.
Mm.
When in reality, like you said, 26 posies at a touch under 77%, 450 meters gained, 7 marks in his own right. Like, and he's out by way of champion data ratings. He was our fifth best
Mm.
on ground for the afternoon. I, AFL, yeah, fantasy points 94. So if you got him in your fantasy side, you're not really complaining too much either in that
Yeah.
regard. Not that, take that with a grain of salt. But
Yeah, the
I,
second
in
most intercepts per sessions as well, and four scoring volume. Like all the numbers are pretty
uh,
great, and that's why.
pretty good,
Yeah,
yeah. Playing 78% time on ground, so pretty average number. So yeah, like I said, I know I was one, like I just said in the first quarter, who's gone really hard at a poor effort. But after watching the replay and just kind of seeing a few things off the ball, but involved in other contests, just some teamwork. And on top of that, he's in that age bracket where us as spectators have no idea what he is doing in way of direction on the field. Like, see that senior leadership piece that I tended to bang on a bit about last year in particular. And he's in that age bracket where he needs to be playing well. He should be playing well, and he should be a regular member of our first team.
Yeah.
His age profile where he is right now is what we traded for all those years ago. Um, and it is interesting that you bring him up, because I was watching last night and I thought, fuck, I was probably a bit harsh on him. What was it, yesterday, when I was watching it yesterday? If that makes sense. So, yeah, I'm definitely cooling
It
the Jets a little bit. We
was.
know that potentially something may be around the corner.
Mm.
A mistake that is, or something that leaves a bit to be desired defensively. But yeah, you still have to pay credit where it's due. And overall, I think he had a pretty decent game.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. That's why I brought it up as a watch,
Yeah.
the caveat that it was more of a watch on where he's at in his career, because it is so, and because of the fact that it was a too high profile thing. So I'm actually like, I actually wanted to give him credit for the game he played too, but I'm like, I can also
Mm.
see why he continues to frustrate, and that's what's just so, again, the enigma that is Ryan Burton. It's just such a fascinating situation we find ourselves in. But like, I actually think he, as I said, he was a solid in the plus profile. And again, as you said, 23 contributors. There's no one that isn't in the plus point of the result. And he's very much got a lot of credit in the bank, actually, I think, for the result. But it's also just so funny that the fact that there is still a moment where you go, fuck, there's an effort there that you didn't give. And that's like, and whether that's just like an overconfidence, which I don't want to change like who he is as a player, but you just want to you just want to dial it in a little bit and just be like, just put 100% effort in at making sure that's not a goal until you know it's not going to be a goal. Because as again, as I said to you on the day, us Port Adelaide fans know better than any the tricks of the Sharon, the mystery of the mystique of the Sharon and what it can do.
Mistake, yeah.
Is something that is very much part of our love for this game. So, yeah, but that's overall a very, very good effort from everyone in the back line, and a lot of guys that really did help to push up the field as well and get that transition game going far better than we've seen it many times this year. So, really, really impressed with everyone back there. And yeah, as you said, long may it continue. Midfield, a fascinating midfield battle. Whether you're talking matchups with, as you mentioned earlier, Butters versus Viney, or just the swings in and out of the midfield, because we didn't really get any domination as far as like centre bounce attendances or anything like that. We certainly didn't have the numbers that Melbourne had, but I think we actually effectively utilised a little bit of the chaos that this game was going to bring. Obviously, with them. And because I Pickett, it was actually 87% of centre bounce attendances. He was pretty much in there.
Yeah.
And as you had some point, we both had points of frustration when he had his magic minute, but unfortunately we curtailed it across the second half. But this was never.
Well, it was compounded by his first half as a whole, because it
Yeah.
just seemed that no one wanted to take accountability for him. Every moment that you looked, he had like 3 to 5 meters of space. It felt like and it felt like 10 meters of space. And for someone that nimble, that quick, and that skilled, you just like, someone fucking lock this guy down. And then he has that magic minute, and kicks a couple of quick goals on top of that first goal, like you mentioned, and you're just tearing your hair out a little bit.
Mm.
So and Melbourne need it. To be honest, Melbourne
Yeah.
need him in the guts. To be honest,
He's an incredible player. A little bit of the case of the Divies. By the way, before we get into the midfield stuff too much, I can't believe that they even had to do a press release. Like, Butters has avoided a fine for like that fucking contact. I didn't
a clear
realize
accident, a clash.
It's just because Butters gets fined so much, they have to announce when he's not getting fined for something that any other, like if that was, I'm trying to think of an example, like just some
fine watch.
Yeah, some know nothing play. Day 60, fine watch. The mood is tense. Wake up, panda bitch. Yeah, it's I can't believe they even had to have a release for that. Because I'm just like, when I saw it again on replay, I was just like, that's fucking nothing. Like Butters has done far worse. Like
Mm.
it's
And Cozzy can count himself lucky that he got a free kick out of it. I know the crowd were not happy at all with that
mm,
decision.
yeah, because that was kind of right above like kind of our vantage point more or less. I
You could say right in front of me.
I, I was almost going to do it. I was like, I have to hit that so many times, but I don't mind it. Yeah, because I obviously went up and sat in your family seats this weekend. So thank you for letting me do that. So interesting. It's a good vantage point.
It's a great view angle.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's our pleasure.
the glass panels of emotion, as now I'm going to call
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really become a thing.
it.
And
Yeah,
they get a workout. They cop a few slaps along the way.
yeah, yeah. No,
Good for good and bad.
yeah, yeah. Not that I hit them hard. Obviously, I did actually have a bit of sore on the edge of my wrist because like one of the little bolts that's in the glass, like just when I like hit my hand on it at one point, it just like caught the edge of the bone, and it was a little bit sore. I
Yeah,
swear it's not like
yeah.
I'm not like a
Rookie error.
rabid fan, but yeah, yeah. I should have asked Jamie. I was like, how do you do a frustrated slap of this without hurting your wrist?
Oh, I'm so embarrassed to say that when I was younger and dumber, I've actually punched that thing before, and that did not treat my hand very well. But the less said about that, the better.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I
No,
said, pretty embarrassing.
we're a lot better now. And like I said, mine was just more of a like it just caught the edge of my bone. But yeah. Anyway, the midfield stuff. It was always going to be a battle with Gorn going to have the domination he's going to have. I think there's not much to be said as far as Vicentini or Sweet having wins on the weekend, but they both battled incredibly well to help mitigate it. There was points in the game. It happened a lot of times in the commentary. They were like Porter on a like 6-0 hit out run, but Melbourne have won the clearances. Or when Gorn was starting to get some domination was when it wasn't one. It was a real battle in the middle. There wasn't going to be any clear delineation of if you get winning the hitouts, you're getting, and I think even one of the commentators, and shout out to Eddie, who also said this, like hitouts are a useless stat to a certain extent. It's more about what you're winning, the advantage you're getting out of them. The
Mhm.
hitout battle was marginally won by Melbourne, but Vicentini and Sweet both being able to switch out helped us be able to get a bit of win in there. And then they did get some clearance domination, but not a whole lot. And there was Petrarca had like a magic 5 minutes in the third quarter, but otherwise he had the 17 disposals. He didn't have a massive game. Clayton Oliver just kind of accumulated and slapped it away off his boot. But beyond Kazai,
He's had, yeah, gone
yeah,
at 50% Clayton Oliver. So it's almost like, oh, we'll just give them the ball because they'll just give it back to us anyway.
yeah, give it to Asava.
Really well. Yeah, exactly. They'll kick it right in his zone. A big
Exactly.
Savaloy. Yeah, yeah. So
I thought it was an
midfield.
incredible. Yeah.
Midfield. Yeah. The rucks. So I don't actually have an individual watch because I do believe, much to I'm sure some, whether they're listening or not, people's chagrin, I don't have one particular son of a gun in my crosshairs. I do genuinely believe that, yeah, 23 players acquitted themselves perfectly. So I don't have an individual watch. My watch is actually the ruck battle because
Mm,
when you look at their stat lines, I think Sweet shades Viz just, in certain regards. And so he should, to
mm,
be honest. But it's still close enough that like the coaching staff, the selection panel, because we're not going to go with two rucks every single game on our run home. I don't believe. So just that competition for that spot is very, very interesting. But
mm,
before going too far into that, yeah, Gorn had a fantastic game. He probably feels the weight of the entire world on his shoulders more often than not, and more often than not, he's up to it. There's moments throughout the game, like, we kind of got in his head. I think it was on Agenda Setters or whatever fucking show it was that Mitch Cleary highlighted the fact that at quarter time, Max Gawn and Ken Hinkley were kind of
yeah.
chirping at
I
each
only
other a
saw
little
that like an
bit.
hour before
So,
we recorded, actually. Yeah, I was like, I had no idea.
yeah, yeah. So there's, what is it, 6 years now of Ken v Gawn when you go back to 2019
Mhm.
and the clear game plan to just everyone rocket into Gawn at every time, every occasion. So he was up to it, but yeah, while we didn't gain dominance, it's hard to say whether because, and again, another thing that we spoke about on Thursday or Friday in our squad show is the fact that the two rucks being fresher for longer going to hold us in good stead. I can imagine in another universe, had we played one ruck, that drop off being significant, and then alternatively giving Max Gawn and Melbourne a huge advantage as the game wears on. But the fact that we went with two rotating fairly regularly, does that did that keep that playing field as level as we possibly could? Because we also spoke about like what's par for Max Gawn. He's probably gone just above it. He's got the 36 hit outs, 10 to advantage. He played a great game, 20
I think his
contested
average was
possessions.
35.7. So, oh, wait, where was it? We did talk about this in the squad show.
We did,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's about par for him. So we just didn't want him to have like that generational ruckman game, and that's what we asked for, and that's probably we got that. So to your point, yeah,
He played a great game. Yeah, he didn't play an outstanding game.
yeah,
And that shot for goal was deplorable. Like, to be frank, that he had
yeah. Then he had a
a
running
real
snap a
ruckman
couple of minutes
shot on
later,
goal.
and it was probably a better effort to be fair, but it's a ruckman running snap. So
Yeah, yeah.
ruckman don't do that to harken
It's
back
not
to
2021
Ice it.
anymore.
And yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't do that.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
mate, that moment is burnt into my brain
yeah, that was limbs.
for all the right reasons.
That was a limbs moment in my seating area at the ground at the time. So, uh,
But
yeah,
it's a bit of a drop off, like we said. After Gorn, yeah, you've got Clayton Oliver wasting the ball effectively, kicking it straight up in the air more often than not.
mhm,
Viney with his time being spent getting in fights with Zach Butters and trying to keep him accountable while not really working. At times, Langdon looked like he was gliding across the field. It looked like we gave him a bit too much space at times, but then he ends up with just the 17 disposals, and overall, our midfield just absolutely takes the chocolates in my opinion. When you consider the fact that Butters was by and large tagged,
mhm.
and the fact that he broke through, and I think Butters, when you consider that, had an outstanding game.
Yeah.
Just like
I think if
after
that's
the
Butters
Geelong game,
being
or
held,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
doing okay. Like,
mm,
yeah,
yeah. Well, and then you've got him and JHF. Do, we spoke about. I brought up the fact that in that Geelong game, it's so frustrating, but you have to respect the fact that under pressure, they just have the ability to just spot up teammates
mhm,
25 meters on an angle or whatnot, just to relieve that pressure.
yeah,
And Butters and Horne-Francis are our versions of that. And I feel that Butters' game in that regard now is just really coming to the cream is really rising to the top from an individual point of view.
mhm.
And Horne-Francis coming back in just can't tackle that guy, and he has that finesse where, yeah, under pressure more often than not, they're just trying to maintain the ball through teammates and keeping as much pressure off everyone else as possible, which I love watching, and I'm so happy that they're both the pieces that we have in our board and ably supported by everyone else that ran through there. Obviously, I was alluding to Jackson Mead before. Um,
Yeah.
and there'll still be people out for blood because there's still people that think that we should be bringing in more and more youth and Murray's being out and whatnot, and the fact that the
Notwithstanding that
Maggies
Jackson
are
Mead is still
still
youth,
up and about.
like he's still relatively young.
He's still relatively young. Yeah, and yeah, 16 posies at 81%. Um, Only the 85 meters gain, so it's more of a link up type role.
Yeah, it's on
But
nice little
I don't know
dishes.
if you're getting
Um,
dropped. I don't know if you're getting dropped on that. Like Willem Drew was everywhere.
mhm.
He had a sub 20 disposals, but he didn't play as well as he did against GWS in my opinion. But I think that's more so because some of our other blue chip talent were carrying a heavy load.
Mhm.
Not to the detriment of the team. It was just the way it is sometimes.
It
So
was a more open
I think
game,
us.
So like, the
Yeah, yeah.
GWS game was really tight in close quarters, so it benefit. And for us to, if we're going to play a good game that's tight, then that's where William Drew really does rise. If it's a game that's even Jared Healy at the end of the game was like, that was a really good game of football. It was one of the better ones I've seen this year. This was like well, it's not massive scoring, but this was a game of football that had a lot to love for the footy lover. It was
And
more
Drew
like,
still had 7 tackles,
exactly, yeah, he played his
which
role. He
equal
just,
led the team. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. He still was as I said, for many of them, they were massive plus points. Did want to, you touched on Clayton Oliver's disposal efficiency at 50%. Petrarca was only at 52.9. You know, Viney at 70. When you look at that comparative to our ball users, you know, Butters at 80%, Wines and Horne-Francis are both at the 70 odd, I think. 72, sorry, each, and then Rosie. I mean, Rosie and Bergman both who floated in and out of between halfback or, you know, deeper down. You know, Rosie was at 78%, Bergman was at 81. You mentioned Jackson Mead at 82. Matty Little,
Jace at 81.
yeah,
Burgoyne, that is.
yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. So we had a lot of the guys, the comparative players to theirs versus ours. We were running at 20 to 25 to 30% disposal efficiency better. So it's just like, for us as a team that we've lamented at times our ball use and just an immature and misunderstanding of what we're doing. This was a massive, massive win against an engine room with as many premiership winning ball users and dominating. Like, this was a team that won the premiership and then went and won 9 or 10 in a row to start the next year before they started.
Yeah,
The wheels started to fall off a little
they
bit.
did.
This was a team at one point that we were talking about dynasty and everything, and do have premiership medals to account for it. So, you know, they have reached the ultimate.
They've done the thing.
Yeah. So for us to comparatively just do so much better and get the matchups right, even with Viney and Butters, fucking. By the way, watching the replay, I know we didn't see it at the ground, but seeing Butters just again having another example of getting like Viney just getting into his face and Butters just pushing, jumping,
laughing
but the entire time laughing. I love seeing that fucking idiot. I don't know who she is, but so it's popped up on the social medias. I'm sure you've seen it. The Melbourne fan just
Stacey.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
calling Butters a tip rat cunt. And so asking someone to lay him out. And I almost replied, I was like, I don't want to deal with a bunch of Melbourne fans in the mention, so I just left it. But I almost replied.
I think she copped it more than she
did. I saw a bunch of
fans
getting in there. I was like, you guys have done the job. But I was going to reply and be like, well, you know, May could lay him out, but he's too busy on his own teammates. So
I think there was a couple allusions to that as well. Yeah. It's a weird line to go down. When you've got someone like Stephen May on your side.
Even
Jake Lever is a bit of a whinger at the best of times as well. So.
And Pickett taking a few flops on the day, and Jack Viney having the history he does with us.
Yeah, weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, but back to the point anyway. We had a bunch of guys that have, you know, we've lamented a lot of the ball use and how we use it through the middle, but everyone just, this was the first game this year that I was just like, this midfield stood up across 4 quarters as well. This was the first 4-quarter game, even if we didn't win the quarters well. But I mean, getting a goal after the siren for the first 3 quarters was wonderful.
For 3, rare.
Yeah, I thought we sustained an effort. Yes, they got their little runs at times. So I think we sustained a game plan effort. There wasn't a moment in the game where I thought. I mean, the commentator said at the start of the 4th quarter, Porter starting to bomb it, but I think we were just kind of withstanding some pressure, and then the midfield again. We never got. It was a battle. That's what some AFL games are, just a battle. There's not clear wins or anything like that. But when you look at our ball use numbers and our disposal efficiency numbers, you see the wins within the lines and how we used it and just how much more confident we were in what we were doing. And we've lamented the midfield a lot this year as what should be our best line being our worst line across the year. And this is a game where just all lines really stood up. But I think our midfield effort, probably my favourite effort for the year. No standouts. But just great performances across the board. I mean, we talked about in the squad show, I think HORNE-FRANCIS coming in and just some of the bursts through, like, there's a moment in the last quarter where you can kind of see him start, like kind of juke his defender and get off and just burst through the contact and like stiff arm through. And it was just not long.
Was that at a stoppage?
Yeah, stoppage on the wing.
That was fucking electric. Yeah, and the commentators certainly enjoyed it. And it just sums up everything that we love about him. And again, he's going to take the piss in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
Mark my words. Uh, Really interesting. Yeah, across the board. And we also spoke about how Jace offers a forward target and would give them a, a bit of a headache. Weird setups, as it's been spoken about, moving to the forward line a little bit, but yeah,
Mhm.
Jason Horne-Francis game as a whole. And as it turned out, he got the shots on goal too to go along with his midfield dominance, I guess you could say.
I mean, one of those
Uh,
that first shot that should have been a goal and he just shaves the
mm,
post. I mean, that
should have
was
been a goal
yeah.
or a handoff, do you reckon? I reckon he had a
Was that
guy on
Sweet
as
that was
well.
running? That was Sweet that was running at the. But
I can't remember now who it was, but
there's someone running in.
he should have kicked it. Like
Yeah, I mean,
it's
he very close. I mean, if he just hadn't shaved the post, we're not even talking about it. But yeah, it is. It was a lot more. You could just put it through the fucking middle as well. But that was, I mean, that was one of those an early sign to me. Like I think that was what a couple minutes into the game. I think it was the first score of the game was him shaving that post and went. Oh, I think the hamstring's okay. He's take off for a run down the wing and kind of like put the pace on to
ah
make sure he's beating the
yeah,
chases and.
just the way he gets out of trouble, just the way
Mm,
he shakes off a tackle. It leaves you bubbling away under the surface. Gives you chills sometimes just watching it happen in the moment. Um, not to be bring a downer upon it all though. But I have found myself kind of residing in a few dark pockets of my mind in reflection and just thinking like, why now? Like why we're in round
oh,
14 and like our midfield has just finally decided to come to the party for the year. Um, yeah, and you can't help but think about some of those early season fixtures that we dropped, and now we're more or less fighting for our season, and it's not over. We find ourselves in 11th now all of a sudden after everyone thought, you know, we were going to stay at 15th for the rest of the year and we should rebuild. But and look, to be honest, I think 10th and 11th is where we'll stay for the most part
yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, I just as good as this was, and as much as I enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed the last 2 weeks, I'm just like fucking hell, because the players aren't, yeah, they haven't been too dissimilar across the majority of the year.
Yeah. You
Where's
look
that
at this.
been? Where's that effort been?
I mean, you look at. I mean,
Our
obviously.
defense has copped it by and large for the first half of the season, but I'm yeah, just trying not to stay there. I'm just trying to enjoy what we saw and potentially, you know, 13 winning streak Mark two,
Yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah.
off the back of our midfield rise.
That would be nice. I wanted to just one more thing on the well, on Jason and France in particular. I thought I the Jason Horn Francis storyline a few weeks ago with the North Melbourne game and his anger issues and like borderline like an
Mm.
issue for the coach and all that shit that came up with. I think it was David King talking about that. I thought it was interesting in the wake of like watching Stephen Maybe and absolutely, and we're starting to move to the forward line, but Max Gorn, I think I leaned over at one point to you during the game and went like, Max Gorn's so nice off the field, but fuck, he's a cunt. Like it's just like I was mad. Like Max Gorn was being a fucking cunt. There was a bunch, and I was just like, this team, like, there's just when you actually watch them, I was like, they're so
But
unlikable.
in the
I don't.
moment, I knew exactly where you were coming from. I'm like, yeah, I actually really like him. You know, I've listened to him on, you know, Hamish Blake's podcast, and yeah, you know, yeah, he's carrying the whole club on his shoulders, like I mentioned before. But yeah, just whenever you come up against him, it's just some instances where you're like, you're a cockhead.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
sure
don't do
fans. I
that.
mean, yeah, we just talked about old mate Stacey talking about fucking Butters on Twitter, but although we don't get into that, and like again, I'm acknowledging that he's probably a pretty good bloke off the field. It's just like there was just some moment I can't even remember what the moment was. I don't know if he just a cheap shot at one of our players, but
Well, on
yeah,
top of
I
that
thought it was
too,
interesting
like
just that
the fact
we
that he started getting some cheapies as well, it seemed
yeah.
at the ground in watching it live, and I said to you and the people who sit around us and whatnot that I vividly remember seeing him discuss with an umpire, whether it was near the end of the first
Mm,
quarter time or whatnot, clearly talking about some attention that he was receiving, and then it just seemed all too convenient that in some of those 50-50 contests down the track, umpires were kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, and it's like, that's the pull some of these Victorian-based players, it's the grace that they're afforded sometimes.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it just seemed all too coincidental. And then, yeah, when you mix in some of those, yeah, really weird and annoying portions of it, you're just like, fuck you, man. Like, fuck off. Get the fuck out.
Oh, well, I do just, he's one of those players that outside of like when I'm watching a poor game, I'm like, I like watching him. Like, he's just even just an interesting looking bloke, like the bald head and the beard. I'm just like,
Mm,
you're a fucking
mm.
aesthetically pleasing footballer to watch. And like, I loved his, I mean, his, prelim final against Geelong back when they won the premiership was just an all-time game. But glad we didn't get that goal kicking performance on the weekend though. Um,
No.
but I mean, I just thought it was interesting as we moved to the forward line with talking about the some of that stuff with Horne-Francis a few weeks ago, and Horne-Francis being like, in his early, like, low, 21. I think he's still 21, but either way, he's still an incredibly young footballer, someone who would be of still not quite draft age if he was playing in most American sports. And we watched Stephen May spend an entire game being undisciplined as fuck, and we've obviously know the Stephen May history. And that is a man I don't like off field either. Like, I just don't think. And maybe he's a nice bloke when you get. I don't know. I'm just saying from what I see, both some major tabloid stuff as well as the on-field
He's got a
stuff.
track record.
Yeah, but he was undisciplined all day. Got
Hmm.
massively beaten by Georgiades, and we'll certainly talk about Georgiades in a moment. I just thought it's such a media narrative thing of like when Horne-Francis being a young up and coming player, like it's a sexy thing to talk about his temperament because they know he's going to be so good. Whereas Stephen May is like a fucking 200 game plus veteran premiership player, should be a lot more calmer than he is in a round 14 matchup against Mitch Georgiades. Like, he just lost his mind multiple times in that game. Like whether it be he did it throwing Georgiades out the way a couple of times. He put the elbow into Darcy Byrne-Jones after he kicked the goal, and there was an argument for whether we should be getting another one of those double goals. Would have been
Yeah.
fascinating to get two in one game because we did get one earlier in the game, but
Because then he did a similar thing or he tackled Georgiades after
and he actually got
Georgia, and
50
that's when
there.
we got the 50. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the Darcy
Just
Byrne-Jones
amazing.
elbow straight into his throat after, and luckily I think POWELL-PEPPER and someone else came in pretty quickly and just removed May from the situation. But
Mm.
yeah, it was just undisciplined. I thought it was a fascinating. It was just a little brainworm I was having on the drive home as I was a beautiful drive home. Like there's city lights sparkling over the Salt Lakes. Like, I love. There's some like kind of like Michael Mann cinematography thing that goes through my mind as I'm watching as I'm driving the Northern Expressway past the Salt Lakes and watching the lights of the city bounce over it. I'm just thinking like Stephen May should get a lot more like shit for like comparative to how Jason Horne-Francis was like tabloid news after that North Melbourne game. I was just like,
Mm.
why? Like, it just shows media, whatever the media want to talk about, does, that is very manufactured at times. And yeah, I thought there was a lot of ill discipline from very, very experienced Melbourne players. And the highlight was the fact that our undermanned forward line was able to exploit that. And, Georgiades, who has been in incredible form, and I guess we should start with him because that's the place to start. And I'm sure that his stats are going to come up later as well. But purely just beyond the goals and the marks and everything, just his presence. I mean, they didn't have his leading, his again, considering he's the number one target and there's not really anyone else. I mean, there was a couple of moments actually that Jordan Sweet kind of almost like interrupted his flow, and Georgiades did drop a mark at one point, but that's a powerhouse performance. We've been begging for a bag. We've talked about it a bunch on this podcast. Again, as I
Yeah,
said near the start,
absolutely.
it could have
As
been
I'm sure
better.
everyone else has been waiting for.
Yeah, but that's a bag. 7 goals. I mean, the club record in an AFL game is 8 goals in a game, like jointly held by sovereign citizen Warren Treadray and Jay Shields. So he was very, very close to the bag, and of course it came up a few times about his old man John Georgiades kicking 8 on debut. There's lots of storylines. Apparently there's a side bet with Todd Marshall about beating his record as well, which is fun. I think Todd Marshall owes Georgiades a $500 bottle of wine or something like that. So
Was that for goals in a game or goals in a season?
so it was for, I think it was that Mitch was at some point this year going to beat his previous record, so he just had to kick more than 5.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I think they
Yeah.
just came up. I can't remember where it came up. I think
Because
it
I
might have
remember
been.
hearing about the wine. Yeah, the $500 bottle.
Yeah, I think it was
That
just
would
that
be nice.
Georgiades said he was going to kick more than 5 at some point, so they were like,
Hmm.
Marshall said, "I'll buy
Oh,
you."
and that's just the biggest tease and foreshadowing of that actually happening. And then, yeah, it materialized.
Hmm.
on Sunday afternoon. And again, like it's just something that we discussed. We thought there was a chance that with the pieces in place, the
Hmm.
fact that May and Lever do prefer being kind of more intercept, May probably a bit more lockdown than Lever, but when you make them highly accountable, and the fact that even though we're undersized, all the resting ruckman that is, needed to do was just provide a presence, provide a contest, and Mitch just through his sheer work rate, I think I speak about it every week now, maybe twice a week. Just it's I think it's really underrated how hard he is actually working
Hmm.
to generate a lot of these opportunities. And yeah, it all clicked on the day. Just quickly going back to May and free kicks, just in general, I find it absolutely amazing the vitriol that's coming out of the Melbourne supporter base in regards to free kicks aiding our victory
The umpires
on the
handed us the
weekend. I
game. I was
find
just
that
like,
amusing.
what? I mean,
Yeah, it's wild.
I mean
Just wild.
the 50s were basically all for the 9 meter thing, like the nine, like just getting that
Mm,
nine,
mm.
and they kind of evened up. Like that was called pretty evenly, so that's not a thing. And then yeah, I mean, otherwise they won the free kick count comfortably once again.
Yeah.
They certainly conned the umpires into a couple through some, and yeah, I just and when the free kick counts that there's that much of a discrepancy, and there's not really any examples of major issues. It's just like, how are you sitting there going, the umpires have handed the opposition a result? Like, if
Yeah.
yeah,
Bemusing, like I
yeah,
said.
let me
It's
just
ridiculous.
scroll.
And some of it does center around Georgiades because, like you mentioned, May put both hands around him, chucked him to the side.
Mm,
Up, yeah. I said to you on the day, I've seen Aaliyah get done for that plenty of times. And look, sometimes I'm like, come on, they're both wrestling, but we crave consistency with umpiring, don't we? So,
yeah.
yeah, and like them trying to mount an argument that May touched the ball that Georgiades marked and then he tackled him because I was like, that's a mark. Like, that's being paid a mark
Hmm.
100 times out of 100. And you play the whistle. Like, yeah, it's just ridiculous. But again, it's centered around Georgiades. That's what made me bring it back up. But we
Hmm.
should go back to him because it can't, yeah, his game can't be spoken more highly of. He is flying the flag well and truly for our forward line this season. And when I can't remember who it was, one of my brothers or yourself showed me the Coleman list at the end of the game, I was just flabbergasted because just due to his inaccuracy and just some of the efforts of opposition, like players from other club forwards from other clubs, like your Jeremy Camerons, obviously topping the pops, some of their efforts, I thought George had found his way that far back. But then, yeah, a big haul like 7 goals automatically puts you into the top five after the round, and
Hmm.
he's starting to get the recognition broadly that he deserves, in my opinion. But the forward line as a group, like we had him kick half of our goals on the night, but I thought that he was pretty well supported. And I mean, we mentioned Horne-Francis, like our conversion was very good. Um,
Yeah.
and again, another week that Jay Schultz doesn't get tagged a lot on social media, but we still left some out there ourselves, and Horne-Francis is a culprit of that on the day. And but apart from that, DBJ contributes. SPP was definitely in your crosshairs early days, but he started marking the ball, so that was
Yeah.
quickly forgotten about. And
Oh, I'm
I
still
thought
mad. I'm still
yeah,
mad at a couple of.
across
There's
across
just
the
a couple of moments.
game.
Like SPP is just. He's so. I think he's just so confident and wants to take. And I love. I don't want to change him, but there's just. It's that moment where he in the I think it was the first quarter. It was when I was still downstairs before I'd come up to meet you, and he's playing around
Yes,
and like just
the over possession piece.
invites the pressure on himself. Even when I think he like somehow high stepped out of a tackle on the wing and then like kind of messed up the possession after that. It was just like I was glad he high stepped out of it. I was like, that's just SPP just making it up as he goes. But he does kick the goal that he gets the opportunity from, and that's all we ask from some of these guys as well. Is like the smaller forwards, the ones that don't get as many opportunities, or sometimes they have to work harder for them. Like sometimes you have the games where it comes easy and you kick a couple or three very easily. But this was a game where there was some real graft around that worked really well. Like SPP obviously takes the opportunity from that free kick on half time, so he gets the goal there. Incredibly, like again, we kick goals at crucial times, which is really good. Darcy Burns-Jones with the 2 goals, one from a set shot, one from some ingenious play from Willie Rioli. Shout out to Willie Rioli, by the way. He gets his 1 goal, but he doesn't get but he has just so much involvement in a lot of what's happening around the forward line still, in the link-up play. Some of the ingenious.
That's why we love Willie.
Yeah, he'll either kick 3 or 4 and have a really, yeah. Jamie's just chuckling, so pleased with himself.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. I can see your energy as I started talking. I was like, he's like Michael Scott when like he's not meant to be doing the thing. Like,
yeah,
and there's
I'm like red in the face.
Yeah.
That's it.
And fucking what's her face? What's the one that he's the boss that he's banging? I can't think of her name, the character's name.
Don't do this because it's going to annoy me now.
Yeah, it's going to annoy him for the rest of it.
I can't remember.
She just rolls her eyes like, oh my god, as he's like, he's just chuckling like, getting dragged back to the fucking office. But yes, we do love Willie. It also reminds me of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like, we love pussy, and like Brad Pitt's character, Cliff Booth's just like, yes, we do. Obviously, pussy being a name in the movie. Anyway, yeah, but Willie, like he's again, the last 18 months of Willie Rioli's career, injury and suspension aside, have been games where he makes an impact with the goal scoring attributes, or he gets involved in the link-up play, or it's a mixture of both. This one's one where he kicks a really good goal when he gets the opportunity, but he has the 11 disposals and just has the perfect small forwards game for me. Again, that's what was great about complementing Mitch Georgiades' performances. We also had the goals from it. Jace Bergman pops up with one, Bergman does, but we just had involvements from everyone. We didn't even need any of Rosie, Butters, or Wines, any of the big stalwart midfielders to get involved in that. HORNE-FRANCIS is the only one. It's partly because he's playing forward a bit. Yeah, we just had an incredible tool forwards game as well as a great compliment from everyone around him. And yeah, we shaded below X scores expectation, probably mainly because of Mitch Georgiades, and then maybe the only other one that really comes to mind is HORNE-FRANCIS's shot on the run. The rest of it, as far as the frustrations in front of goal, are ironically mostly Mitch Georgiades, but he makes up for it in the end. So, incredible commentary around Georgiades at some points during the game. I assume you watched the KO replay as well. I think Jared Healy at one point was just like, Georgiades has no idea where these are going. It was just like,
they're just talking. We swung one to the left and one to the right now. So yeah.
Such as the
still when he's missing though, they're still just shaving they're not to the right or left. Like it's not far, but it's annoying because it is a bit of a habit. Well, it's not a bit of a habit. It's genuinely a habit across the season.
And you can see
come to fruition.
Probably the most obvious miss was one where he's more or less directly in front. You can just see his body. I can't remember if it was Rue or someone. Was Rue in there? I can't remember.
Yeah, Rue cluing in on that left shoulder drop.
Yeah, and you can just
causes him to.
And the more I'm hearing it, the more I'm watching, and you see it, and it's just like, so it is just a mechanics and mental thing. Like that's why I have not too much worry going forward, is that he will lock in on that, and yeah, when he actually does get it all right, it's clear. And as you said, his work rate and everything like that went around into him having this performance that he did. That's incredible stuff. Like he had 97% time on ground, I think, as well. Like he was on the ground most of the game, and his work rate didn't drop at any point in the game. He was leading, he was presenting. He takes the 10 marks. He dropped one that was right in front of him as well. Watching on replay, there's one that hits his hands, and he just like kind of fucking. So it's just like he dropped one of the easiest marking opportunities I think he had of the game, but took plenty of others, so it doesn't matter. That's what's so funny about talking about this game. It's like we can point to multiple examples. It's like, oh god, Mitch, he could have had easily. It's a 10-goal game, but I'm still so pleased. Like it's a game-winning performance. There's a lot of players that had game-winning performances, but we needed someone in such a tight game to stand up and make themselves accountable. And the fact he did keep turning up and ultimately kick the goals towards the end, despite at one point being, 4 goals 3 and 5 goals 4. He does finish off his last couple of opportunities. Yes, the seventh goal comes from a 50-meter, but that 50-meter comes from the work rate. And ultimately, this is the part of the chess match. It's a football game that I love, is he's frustrated the shit out of a fucking clearly volatile idiot that is Stephen May. And I have no qualms in saying that, because just as much as Stephen May's had a great career, like he was clearly,
he's an idiot,
susceptible to being worked by a forward like Mitch Georgiades, and Georgiades just worked him. And it wasn't always his defender. Like, I think at one point Turner was on him, and they just didn't get the matchups right. I don't know if there was a right matchup on the day, despite the fact they have so many good players back there. Georgiades is just kind of hitting that. He's just in that form right now where he has the confidence that it doesn't matter who he's up against. Maybe the fact that he was on Sam Taylor last week, like it kind of was like, and
yeah,
baseball
that's
players
actually a really good
baseball
point.
Players are taking those swings with the weighted bat, and then they take the weight off the
Yeah.
bat. It feels so much easier. Like Sam Taylor is probably a better defender as far as
a weighted bat. Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't actually considered that, but
Taylor's physical and athletic attributes are much more lent to defending Mitch Georgiades, and as good as Stephen May and Jake Lever and Daniel Turner's, I think, turned down back has been pretty good. None of them, like Georgiades, has just had such a tough game against and actually worked him okay. He gets a goal, but not
it was just a genuine battle. Yeah.
He's coming to this
Taylor
one.
probably took the chocolates.
Yeah.
But a great lesson to have for a Mitch Georgiades that is still in his early to mid 20s. Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I think just before we move on as well, I just wanted to bring up Joe Richards for some reason. On the ground, at the ground, just his work rate. But it feels a bit silly to say this because he actually went at 53% disposal efficiency off of his 15 disposals. But I don't know, when the more I see of him, particularly live, the more I trust him with ball in hand. But then in saying that, even though he had the 53% disposal efficiency, he still ended up with 7 score involvements. So just his ability to contribute and be just a genuine team man and a role player off of his work rate, I find really pleasing. And again, we've mentioned it a couple of times this year. It's why they've targeted him. Not necessarily to be the man, because we don't necessarily need that, but we needed an upgrade of McEntee, Francis Evans, and Quinton Narkle. And I'm quite comfortable, again, new player in our system. I'm quite comfortable at this point in time. He is already an upgrade. He could probably do with a few more goals, in my opinion. But, as the season wears on, and then coming into next season with another preseason under his belt at our club, I'm pretty content is probably the word to put along with Joe Richards. So I just wanted to give him a few flowers because some of the kicks that he pulled off early in the game, and then there was that effort in the center where he had to rush the ball or it would land in Melbourne teammates, opposition players' hands, but he kind of had to grab it and kick it, and then he kind of got laid out, which ended in an inside 50. He's just always on, and he's always thinking, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought him up. I even made note there was a period of play in about 2 minutes into the fourth quarter where it was like that frenetic back and forth between the arcs. And he had one of the handballs to start us going forward, and then ends up in contest at our half forward, like centre half forward spot, and it's balls bouncing around. He's in there again and getting his hands on the ball, and it comes out to the wing, a bit more of a contest there, and suddenly he's there again. So there's this frenetic minute of play where he's been involved at the start of it from a half back. It's ended up at half forward. It's kind of come out to the wing because they've gotten possession and kicked it out there. And he's just found himself in and it's just like the work rate to be involved in every one of those 3 contests in about a minute of play at 3 different key points of the field. doesn't end up in anything because it was just as the commentator said, it was just like a frenetic pace and chaos game that it is at the moment. There wasn't anything going on, but he was involved. He found himself at every contest once it came to a contest, and it was just like, yeah, he's as you said, his work rate is incredible, and a clear upgrade on what kind of the role we're tasked him with compared to some of the players that were taking that role in previous years. His class with the ball when he gets an opportunity, and obviously the chances he's had at goal this year have been reasonably well taken. So, including just last week, that clutch goal from the boundary. He's had a couple of those this year too. I still think he set the pace for that onslaught against Hawthorn earlier in the year in gather round as well, when he kicked that one from the boundary to open the scoring. So, knows when to take the moments and knows when to just get involved in the contest as well, which is great. I don't think we've had much more fun going through the lines than we've had in this one. Just like for an effort across every line, it's been a really, really fun one to talk about. A lot of really, really great performances. So I think there's nothing more to do but get into the segments because there's going to be a lot of fun there too.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Grady's best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks truly.
Robbie! Let him entertain you!
Alrighty, Wilson Gray, no shortage of opportunities for this one this week. There was a lot of good stuff. Jamie gets the first bite of the apple this week, and I'm sure he's got a few options, but I'm looking forward to see what you got.
Oh, I'm so excited, but it's still damn. I've got such a huge list. It's not a short list; it's a huge list this week. But it feels like wasted energy writing them all down. And we've had some low hanging fruit before, but I feel this is probably the lowest of low hanging fruit. But before I get into it, just for any new listeners or viewers on YouTube, obviously, thank you for joining us, but we should do a check-in. The Wilson Gray is our award for basically all the efforts in a football game that just lift your spirits, just remind you of the joy that we all find in football, excluding goals, because obviously we have a separate segment for that. And Wilson, Michael Wilson, Robbie Gray being two proponents of some of the core elements of what is now the Wilson Gray defensive efforts, just magic, a bit of that all melded into one. So again, for new listeners and viewers, thanks for joining us. Appreciate everyone's support. But that's what this award is about. So without further ado, I obviously have to go with Connor Rosie's intercept mark.
Petrarca gets it into Melksham. Melksham and coming across and stealing it was Rosie.
Connor Rosie was unbelievable to get across and intercept the ball, but that wasn't a goal. So whether it was a free...
It would be poor of me not to. It's the obvious one, in my opinion, out of a huge list, it must be said. But it was almost like an out-of-body experience for me in the moment, because it went so quickly from, oh, for fuck's sake, to go Connor, to, oh, you can actually get there, Connor, to, you've done, yeah, fuck yeah. And the reactions that piece of play in itself got from the crowd was immense. It contributed to that, elevation of spectatorship was, I think everyone in conjunction, it's that hive mind that tends to happen at football games sometimes, that everyone was just like, oh, for fuck. Here's a certain goal for Melbourne to, oh no, he's making pretty good ground here, to, he's a genuine chance. And in the end, it was quite a relatively easy mark when you look at it, that he made for himself just through sheer work rate. So that moment in isolation is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you add on the fact that it just ends up in just a pure passage of play that does result in a goal, but obviously it's the initial moment that's being highlighted here. Yeah, it's one of the great football moments, I guess you could say, just of sheer work rate and effort, turning fortunes, and then absolutely 12-point playing it down the other end. We were talking about after it all culminated.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really, really glad to be sat with you guys for that one too, because it was a great one to share, like to have
Yeah,
to share with
yeah,
friends, and
absolutely.
because I remember going straight to you and going, "This is a big fuck you to all the people that are like, and not to be to anyone that's been criticizing the captaincy thing." I was just like, "This is like that was just a quintessential captain's moment." And then
Yeah.
obviously the fact it goes down the other end. There's also the context of the game. At that point, we got ourselves 2 goals in front near the start of the second quarter. Then Cozzy had that magic period, and this was in that moment where it was only a couple of points between the sides, and it looked like they were going forward to maybe take the lead. And then, as you said, 12-point play, it goes down the other end after that moment from Connor. So the like context of the game in that moment was huge, and then obviously just even regardless of the context, it was an incredible individual moment, which is the spirit of the Wilson Gray, just an individual moment of brilliance, whether it be defensive or offensive. But when you take into account the context of the game, then as you said, it goes down in one of the magical moments of transition football. Like the commentators were loving it. It was a great moment as what happens forward from it, but it's all generated from his work rate and incredible overhead marking ability. So it's incredible. Yeah, that was the clear front runner. I thought that was probably going to be where you went first, but yeah, I mean, no shortage of opportunities.
I'm looking forward to yours now that's out of the way.
I feel like you're going to
be honest.
Once I say mine, you're going to remember me like tapping you on the shoulder and being excited about this one. But I want to do one honorable mention, being that I'm going to go second, so I know you're not going to have this one. But ESAVA's tackle on Harrison Petty early in the fourth quarter, where he just fucking closes ground like he's
another leopard moment. I think I brought up a leopard moment on Hogan last week.
Yeah,
and that goes along with that athletic ability that he does have.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a moment where it comes. It's when Gawn outmarks. I can't remember if it was Sweet Vicentini. It was one of the ruck battles on the boundary, and Gawn, I think it might be Viz, just ends up on the ground, and Gawn recognizes and takes off running and plays on and puts a ball inside the forward 50 for Melbourne, and yeah, it goes over the back, and Petty goes to chase it down, and it's Zerk Thatcher's actually the one that starts closest to Petty and starts running after him, but the ESAVA kind of comes from behind and just chases him down and tackles him in the boundary. And it's that weird one where the commentators were talking about, like, did it go out or is it a ball up? And they end up balling it up. And
yeah,
maybe it should have been holding the ball then. But
Petty kind of looks a bit like taken aback.
He's like, how the fuck did this guy get here? Like, again, the quandary that is Melbourne realizing they have to deal with an athletic and informed ESAVA. Like, it's just
yeah.
Where does this guy keep coming from? But that's an honorable mention. My pick for Wilson Gray this week was you're remembering it now, aren't you? It was Willie Rioli's no-look handball to Sam Powell-Pepper that then unlocked. It was when eventually Jason HORNE-FRANCIS snaps.
Farrell taps to Rioli. Rioli's got Powell-Pepper. He's got a bit of room. He chips to the pocket here for Port Adelaide. Jump in now. That's 6 goals, 6 from turnover. Great composure.
But when Willie Rioli, I saw it live. It was very similar to when Willie held the ball for Hawthorn and showed him the ball when he kicked the goal, where I looked at you. I was like, did you see him show the ball? I was like tapping you on the shoulder on the weekend going like, Willie, no look handball. Willie, no look handball. And I was just like so cock-a-hoop about it. I was like, this guy, to unlock a no look handball in a game and have it actually work so beautifully. It was just like, I was like, Willie is just a magical footballer. And that was
the Willie has the magic.
Yeah. That's what she said. That was just such a beautiful, and I actually was close to, like, once I worked out you were going first and Wilson Gray, and I was like, I think Jamie's going to go the Connor Rozee mark, but if I was going first, it would have been a genuine battle because I really wanted to talk about the Willie no-look handball. So
you did, yeah. I remember on the day for sure.
Yeah, and both.
Yeah, a great day.
Yeah,
all up. Yeah,
full of magic.
Just going to gush about it for a second.
Yeah. It's funny that both of ours end up in their sequences that end up in goals as well. Not that that's anything to do with the Wilson Gray, but
I think it does add to the
memory of the moment
of it all. Yeah. because obviously, yeah, the commentary is up and about. Although, you know, the goal comes afterwards. But yeah, I think it does add to it does elevate those moments. If they do end up in scores or yeah, goals, I think it does. It's hard to go past sometimes. But even in the spirit of the Wilson Grey, the spirit of football, which was a contender for the name, yeah, individual brilliance, which we love.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And rest in peace to the 1,000 other moments that we could have brought up.
Mm-hmm. The one you mentioned just before with Joe Richards taking the hit, that was an early contender for me at the ground. That was just only overtaken by those other ones since. But yeah, when Joe Richards took that hit to put, when he was like, he knew he was going to take that hit, but still took the ball and put the ball on the foot. I thought that was just, that's quintessential Wilson Grey stuff too. Like that's a player that, you know, he's pretty slender, but puts his body on the line for the team. So lots of options. But
one honourable mention for me before we move on is Burgoyne's mark and then goal. Well, it turns into a goal, but just the fact that he's in foreign territory for himself. He'd had a pretty average first quarter and drew the ire of certain people, like myself, for a couple of poor kicks, just to get it back, you know, just to get it back. Yeah, obviously, yeah, there's a goal attached to it, so it's a bit murky, and it's not being nominated anyway, but yeah, it was just immediate, somewhat immediate in retrospect, just redemption for a couple of poor moments that he'd definitely like back. And yeah, football's sometimes all about getting your own back, and yeah, I was happy for Jace in that moment because it did come out of nowhere, and he's just taking a pack mark, and it's like, okay, yeah, we got our first shot on goal after the siren for the day.
Yeah, the fact that we have to talk about multiple shots on goal after the siren is incredible. But shows to the point of just the entire day going well is just the fact we were locked in towards the end and we were getting goals at the end of the quarter rather than giving them up was really nice. All right, let's get into goal of the week.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint. Stevie Motlop. What a time! Oh! He is floating on air now.
All right, I just cracked my 8% breakfast stout. I'm getting party time here. It's a funny one for goal of the week this week, and I get to go first. A lot of set shots, so it's not like the. But I think that just goes to show how well our game was working as far as getting actually quality opportunities inside forward. But my goal of the week nomination is going to go to a beautiful little period of play that is somewhat held by the assist, but I think DBJ's goal in the last quarter where he takes the assist, beautiful assist from Willie, but just gets it on the like it's just a beautiful running, flowing movement of a play that DBJ kicks the goal. Only has a really second to get it onto the boot because he's about to be crushed by Stephen May again being a cunt. I think this is the goal where May puts his elbow into DBJ's throat after the goal. DBJ just laughs it off, which is great as well.
Bergman towards Vicentini, punch down, Rioli dangerous, gets it on the boot, great kick, Burne-Jones pops it through. Port gets breathing space.
Well, this is the contest you want from your ruckman. He's not a natural forward at all, but great contact there with Lever. Now, a fortunate spoil, I think. This is just brilliance from Rioli. It's unselfish, it's brilliant.
But yeah, that was just a really great, just small forwards goal, opportunistic, getting a lot of the work for the goal goes into just getting into position. But it was a turnover goal as well. So it's just kind of like the fact that they kind of moved that way. I thought it was really good. And yeah, a beautiful, beautiful goal. I had a few options, but that's the one that just, aesthetically pleasing, both in person and then when I watched it on replay, I really, really enjoyed that one. So yeah, DBJ's last goal, little crafty forwards, small forwards goal, opportunistic and quick thinking as well. Love that stuff.
Yeah. So I thought I'd actually just spaced when I looked at my goal of the week shortlist. I was like, did I just forget to write things down in certain portions? But then, yeah, like you said, a lot of set shots. So very pleasing that we sunk them in that regard. Again, no tags for Jay Schultz, the legend. To the point that, like, it is tempting to go with Rioli's off the back of the
Yeah.
Connor. And I can't even remember DBJ's other goal. I've got it written down here, but I can't actually remember it. If
That's so funny because you were talking about it to me when I got up to the seats because I'd missed it because I was up traveling up the escalator as it happened.
Well, and I watched the replay last night, but it totally is. I've just got DBJ slick goal. Let's just go the DBJ double.
Over the top, but fell short. They're over handballing the ball though, Melbourne as well. As many handballs as kicks, leading to turnovers.
Burne-Jones a chance to level the scores. Kick looks good off the boot. That is a glorious finish.
So all square. They needed that one too, Port Adelaide. They've had some really good looks going forward and hadn't been able to hit the scoreboard. So,
yeah. We'll let the video display why it was such a good option at goal. But what I will say, and this ties into a bit of Dwayneism chat, is the Rioli goal was topped off with Dwayne, and I chuckled because it goes Dwayne from the root to the fruit to steal off Rioli's goal. And I was like, who the fuck says that? Except for Dwayne.
Yeah.
Our man Dwayne. Yeah.
I mean,
but no, let's do the DBJ double.
I like that because actually my second choice was DBJ's first one, which was the set shot from an angle and he kind of swings it in nicely.
That's right. Yeah, he wheels around. That's why it was so slick. Yeah, and I was surprised in the moment that he decided to kind of, wheel around on the right because he was running boundary side.
Yeah, and it's just like, but he swings it into that near
curls it in
closer post, but like because of the swing he's put on the boot, it moves it away from the post and puts it through.
All right, there we go. Yeah, we got the description down pat. That's right. I needed the gentle reminder. That was a great goal. Yeah, so get voting
for the listener. Jamie
listeners.
talked me through this goal when I got to my seat, so he was very bet on the day. But
I loved it. Yeah, I'm happy with that now. Yeah, really happy. DBJ. Again, just keeps contributing.
Yeah.
People want to write him off every year, but...
Yeah. It was funny. Some of Mitch's goals that he kind of snuck in the post could have been nominated only if you knew that it kind of seemed like he wasn't sure that they were going to go there. So,
I actually had his first goal on my shortlist, mostly because it was his first shot on goal, and he sunk it, which... just got the ball rolling. Obviously, he still had his misses along the way, but I don't know. I just some things like that sometimes I've mentioned it before, cricket analogies, because I'm a cricket nuffy as much as a football nuffy, but yeah, shots on goal are like catches. Nothing can convince me otherwise. Catches in games of cricket, and taking the first catch generally sets the tone, much like more so on a personal level for George. First shot on goal, kicks the goal, sets the tone for his day.
Just seeing that catch.
And there's the shortlist.
Yeah, just seeing that catch that broke fucking Steve Smith's finger in my head right now. But we'll catch attempt.
Please don't.
Yeah. Pain.
Moving on quickly.
I wanted to, before we get to the votes, you brought up Dwayneisms and I completely forgot one I had written down. When George got tossed aside by May, and he just yells, and then the free kick gets announced, and like just Dwayne just yells into the mic, "Blessed are the meek!" Like,
I got a few written down here. He dropped a subtle shaken but not stirred. Well, he said hopefully he's shaken but not too stirred. After Bergman kicked his goal, he just proclaimed "Smiles Bergman." And I'm just like, that's so cheesy. And then was it Zerk Thatcher got pushed into the behind post at the northern end, and Dwayne dropped a bit of Luke Hodge shade in his kind of assessment.
He was remembering the Chad Wingard one, huh?
Yeah, he's just like, oh, Luke Hodge, yeah. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, he's just dropped the Luke Hodge reference in regard to pushing players into posts.
Yeah, I was at that fucking Luke Hodge game. I'm still livid about that one. Especially when Luke Hodge likes to be like he's like a reformed Christian as far as his commentary goes, but like you just go, hey, we remember what you were like. Yeah, anyway, yeah, some great Dwayneisms again. As soon as I put the replay on and realized Dwayne was on the call, I was like, fuck yes, let's go.
Good game.
Yeah.
Dwayne commentary.
Yeah.
We're set.
Interesting. A real mix of talent on the commentary call, by the way. I just wanted to make a note of that, brother. Very funny that, by the way, I talked about this you in text, so I'll bring it up now. And it was brought up on Twitter a bit. Matt Hill, who I like his voice but he clearly was mispronouncing Bailey Fritz for a while, and it was Bailey Fritz. He kept on saying Fritz, Fritz in his, racing cooler voice. And there was one point where he calls him Bailey Fritz, and then Buckley comes on for his comments and just says Bailey Fritz. And then right afterwards, you hear Hill immediately switches and is calling him Fritz for the rest of the game. I reckon if you got like video inside the bunker of I assume they were calling it from the Fox Footy bunker. I reckon if you actually looked at it, there'd be like Buckley leaning over and tapping Hill on the shoulder and like looking at him as he's saying Fritz, and like Hill going, nodding like, oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was about a period of 5 minutes where Hill went Fritz 3 times in a row, and then very shortly after the third time, like Nathan Buckley makes a comment about Bailey Fritz and really enunciates it properly. I'm just like, yeah, that was a moment where Buckley's like chiming in, being like, okay, Hilly, like just off camera, like off mic here, you're going to see me say this. And like, yeah, thought it was really interesting. But I like Buckley on calls. He's a very calm, astute commentator, like special comments guy on there. And
very similar to Adam Simpson in that Freo call for mine. Just keeps it real.
Guys,
talks football, doesn't tend to show any biases or favorability. Just calling it the way he sees it in a modern football lens.
Yeah,
being fairly recently removed from the game.
Yeah, that's a great guys that have got 10 years of both playing and coaching in the last 30. I think have got a very unique viewpoint and probably like a more calmer way of looking at the game based on their experiences and going through that transition of the game into the modern game. So yeah, it was a fun commentary team. Anyway, let's get into the player of the year votes. It's going to be a good one this week. Now it's time for the CREEDCAST player of the year voting. That's why I had to crack an 8% beer before I had to listen to that again. Jamie gets to go first this week on the votes. Really excited to see how they go this week because I think it's going to be some fun players in there that don't get too much chocolates generally.
Yeah. Very interesting setup when you have to leave Butters as an honourable mention, who did spend some time in the rotation of votes before I landed on my final 5. But yeah, just copping a tag and still performing to that level. And I just thought some of his truly Butters moments nearly got him in the votes. But ultimately, we're kind of spoilt for choice a little bit at that top end, just through sheer contributions and everything else in the pot. But honorable mention to Butters. My 1 vote goes to JHF. Now, JHF had 29 disposals, 11 of those contested, 5 intercepts, and 10 ground ball gets, going at just over 72%, 430 metres gained, 7 marks, 1 goal, 3, with his 8 score involvements and 7 clearances. Potentially could be higher just for the sheer fact that he only played 67% time on ground. Obviously, it's been well spoken about why, but to do that in less than 70% of game time, that's amazing. That could have been a real career day had he not got that stinger on his shoulder.
Coming back from a month off as well. We hadn't seen him since Geelong, so yeah.
Yeah, amazing effort, and probably unlucky to just get 1 vote for that effort. I think I saw that he had a few tackles as well in the mix. I didn't write them down, but you mentioned the criticism about him. There's some elements of his game that have come in this year in particular that naturally go against a lot of that criticism. But moving on, 2 votes for me goes to Miles Bergman. Another, I think it was last week as well, just a real even spread of statistics. 22 disposals, 9 of which contested, 7 of which were intercepts, 7 ground ball gets, just under 82% disposal efficiency, just over 575 meters gained, 7 marks, a goal, 2 goal assists, inside 50s, pressure acts, tackles, you name it. So again, probably unlucky to only get the 2 on this occasion, but definitely in the best players. With his rotation partner in Connor Rosie coming in at 3 for me, 32 disposals, 5 of those intercepts, just over 78% disposal efficiency, a huge 776 meters gained. So Rosie is clearly, while his possession or disposal, I should say, is effective more often than not, he is by and large a meters player, half backer, just a meters gain type player.
That
And
dashing run through
sometimes
the middle early in the first quarter, like where he gets 2 bounces off of the handball from someone, like that kind of stuff is just
that's something that is interesting you bring up, and it's something that I hadn't actually thought about. But obviously, for our American football lovers, and of which you are definitely one, and I have an interest in too, they talk about
nice.
running yards and passing yards. Yeah, obviously, yeah. Yeah, but running yards and passing yards is
Mhm.
differentiated in statistical
Mhm.
spreadsheets, and it would be interesting to see a breakdown of running meters in
Versus
metric
meters gained
system
by foot.
versus by foot. Yeah, that would be really interesting because, like you said, it's something I hadn't thought about. But Rosie does tend to, yeah,
He likes a
dip,
dash
dive,
when
duck, dive, and
he's
dodge, or whatever it is. The five Ds of dodgeball.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, oh, that's gonna that yeah, that's gonna be front of mind now watching Connor. But 5 marks, 4 score involvements, 12 rebound 50s,
It's
15
fucking
pressure acts,
crazy.
12 of which were in the defensive half and 4 tackles. So, captain's game, he's just really flourishing. He's on the precipice by way of champion data of being in the All Australian half back line. I was listening to Daniel Hoyne uh, talk about the statistical All Australian side at the halfway point, and while the half back line was three deserving players, I can't remember who they are now. Basically, he said, the ones breathing down their necks, da 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 da, and Connor Rosie. So he's on the precipice, and to be honest, if he keeps going the way he is, I'm pretty confident that he could get a nod, which would mean that he would be All Australian for each line in his young career.
Yeah, yeah. By
Don't want to count chickens or anything like that, but that's potential type stuff. Now the next 2
the
are
fact that he's
interesting
even been
because
mentioned at that point is
yeah, sorry,
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that
yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to go back to Daniel Hoyne again, so I just wanted to mention now we've talked about, I think this time last year probably, Daniel Hoyne's dislike of Connor Rosie as a champion data player. At some point last year, I feel like it came up that Daniel Hoyne didn't rate him so highly. So it's just interesting that now that the metrics have his position has changed and the metrics have
When he owns that, like
oh
he
yeah, no,
references the fact that he was
starting.
harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's a stats guy. Yeah, he's a data guy. So while he was ready to highlight the fact that Rosie potentially wasn't pushing up into the upper echelons of the competition last year, he's definitely giving him his flowers this year, which is nice. Because yeah, what's not to like really on the eyes and on the spreadsheet. But so yeah, like I was saying, the next 2 are interesting because I'm sure, yeah, it'd be interesting to see everyone's 4 and 5 votes in this regard, or top 2 players. But I've got George at 4.
Mm.
Um, everyone knows his stat line: 18 disposals, 7 of which were contested, 430 meters gained, which I would say a bit of that is meters from kicking at goal, but
Yeah.
we have noted that he does work up the ground still, and he got 4 inside 50s in this match, 10 marks, 3 of which were contested, 7 goals for, and he also had a goal assist. I've put ESAVA as best on ground, and I'll just go through his stats: 18 disposals as well, 7 contested as well, like George, 12 intercept possessions, 88.9% disposal efficiency. He's not a very high meters gain player, ESAVA, but the fact of the matter is he's doing exactly what I want, and I've mentioned it before. Just keeping it simple. He's either giving it to a ball user or he's kicking it long to a contest. I can't really ask for much more. I don't expect ESAVA to pick off players and take those risks. And he's not. And I appreciate that.
I still
13
think he had a
marks.
really, really good disposal game. There wasn't.
So, yeah, so do I.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really, really good. Betrayed some of the expectations of what people have of ESAVA.
Yeah,
including us.
Yeah.
We've been guilty of saying keep it simple. I actually said to you at the game, I was like, the keep it simple, stupid, like the KISS thing that people say. I didn't want to say that about
keep
Sav,
it simple, Sav.
but I was just like, you can say keep it simple, Sav. But across the game, and watching it on replay, I thought he actually disposed of the ball both by hand and foot at times quite well, and not just safely, but actually the way you'd expect anyone to do so.
Yeah, stepping up, we love that. 13 marks, 4 contested, 8 intercept marks, 8 1%ers, and that's 6 spoils within that. He had 3 contested defensive one-on-ones, and he didn't lose any of those. It's a rare highlight because they're few and far between on that stat line, but it was best on ground for Port from a contested defensive one-on-one stat, but also the fact that he didn't lose any either. You get your ones, you get some twos and whatnot, or you get some threes, but then other players have lost 1 or 2 of those one-on-ones. So it just kind of adds another extra little bit on top. The reason I've gone for ESAVA as best on ground for mine is that I think from a defensive point of view, I mean, you mentioned the inside 50s, and while we laugh about them benefiting him, he's still got to seal the deal. Our defense has been under pressure more often than not for the majority of the year, and I think it's probably harder to perform at this level in a defense line than it is for George, while his work rate is phenomenal. And look, he's got 4 votes. With that service to him, I think it's just that fraction easier for him on the day to perform than it is for ESAVA, because you've got no friends as the last line of defense. You bring up goalkeepers in soccer frequently. When you stuff up, you've got no friends on that last line of defense. And for mine, the way I see it is that it's just that fraction harder, in my opinion, for an ESAVA to perform than a George to perform on the day. And that's my rationale.
Yeah, especially to that level. No, I really like that rationale. And while I'm not going to change my votes, you could talk me out of them. What's incredible, I'm going to mention it because I've worked this out as I've typed yours in. Because as you mentioned with the Wilson Gray, any new listeners listening, Jamie and I do our votes obviously off air, but we don't know where our votes are going for each other until we hear them live on air. So we take turns in who goes first each week. So I had no idea where Jamie was going to go with his votes. What's incredible is often we end up with the Yahtzee, which we call the Yahtzee. As you know, it doesn't happen too often we have Yahtzee, but we sometimes have a similar mix of players with a couple in the same spot. We've had, I think, twice the Yahtzee where we've had the exact same votes, 1 through 5. I don't think we've ever had the same players in our 5, but none of the positions be the same. What's happened today?
We've come close, that's for sure.
But today we have the same players, but none of them in the same position, which is incredible. It just goes to show, I think, and it's a really good bookend, and not that this is scripted because we do this, we're recording this live, so though you're listening to it post-script, but a good bookend to your point about the 23 contributors, because I think, it's incredible that we've got the same votes, but none of them in the same position. So I'll run through mine quickly. You've run through the stats, so we don't need to go through that. But I have Bergman in the 1. I have Rosie in the 2. And I think I have HORNE-FRANCIS in the 3. Radaglia at 4. Georgiades at 5. But the Georgiades and Radaglia, because it was the first time I'd ever done my votes and had a forward and a defender in the 5 and 4 spot. So, and I was trying to do the same thing as you did and try to work out where I was basing. And I just went, Georgiades. Ultimately, I was just like,
well, George got the 10 coaches' votes, so you wouldn't be alone in your assessment of all of that.
Exactly. But I think at one point during the early parts of the game, I said to you, I said, Radiglia's in my votes right now. And at that point, Georgiades probably wasn't. So by, ipso facto, Radaglia was probably top of my votes at that point. It's just I got to the end of it, and I was just like, 7 goals. I got to give someone can't get. Yeah, but then that's the thing with Radically's incredible performance with the intercept marks and stuff. It's just like, yeah, it was a tough decision for me. But it's just where I went with it. HORNE-FRANCIS I popped up a little bit, but the thing with the 3-3-1, when you're not having a midfielder in the top two in a game where the midfield performed pretty well, it's so tough. Like you're just kind of picking out little things. And I think watching the replay when HORNE-FRANCIS did that thing we talked about earlier when he busted through the contest and did stiff arm.
It was sexy. Yeah, it
sexy.
Was
I think that probably popped him up a couple of spots for me. I'm a HORNE-FRANCIS.
Well, and like I said, probably unlucky to be the one spot because he did all of this within 67% time on ground. He played 3/4 of football. So fair enough, in my opinion, in regards to your votes, for sure.
But it's incredible that neither of us got Butters in a game that we both think he played pretty well. And that's
even last night I watched it and I was like, Butters has to be in the votes, but he's not.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the team performance, and again to the bookend to it is like the 23 contributors. So, an incredible game from everyone, and I think those votes show it. I will mark this down as the day that we got 5 players. We got the exact same 5 players, but none of them were in the same spot. I think that's quite incredible, but just goes to show the performance it was on the day. A lot of even contributors, a lot of highlights, but a true team effort and in a tough game. And again, as Jared Healy said, one of the better games he's seen in recent years. So a wonderful game to be a part of. I'm glad we were both down there, and beautiful Sunday afternoon, beautiful Sunday session that it was. Yeah. Anything else in that game? You want to briefly touch on this weekend's game and get wrapped up for this Tuesday evening?
Let's wrap it up.
Let's do it. Alrighty, 3:45 p.m. this Saturday afternoon. It's looking like a beautiful Saturday afternoon, considering it's the 21st of June. You don't go asking for too much, but sunny and 19 is the max for this Saturday. So 3:45 p.m. we host the Sydney Swans. Was it the first of ever return fixtures this year? We haven't had one yet.
It is.
Yes, yeah. I should have looked. I was looking at Jamie on the screen. I was like, please tell me that you know this. Yes, this is the first of our return fixtures. An intriguing one that it is, one that we are favoured in. $1.58 on Sportsbet versus Sydney's $2.39. Not that means anything because we were the underdogs slightly last week. So gamble responsibly. But an incredible looking Saturday afternoon coming up. Before we get into the injuries, the injury updates for both teams. Just how are you feeling just off the cuff of a couple of wins in a row and everything like that? How are you feeling going into a game against the Sydney Swans who, they do have a couple of intriguing players potentially coming back this week, but they have had an indifferent season for a team that has been contending over the last few years.
It's hard not to feel buoyed after 2 wins and one in the way that they were. And again, it's at home and we've managed to beat these guys on their home deck. Granted, they've had their injury issues, but we're not strangers to that problem either. And when we played them, I don't think we had our full side on the park either. And we still managed to get the win away. So yeah, absolutely confident. And whether it be the early parts of the season or portions of the season, you're looking for trends, and that's how you can truly make your assessment. And we've got a couple of wins on the trot. We can't really make any mistakes. It's looking like it's going to be a pretty good day weather-wise, and I'm sure the crowd will be up and about after what we saw Sunday and out of the back end of the bye. So yeah, I'm pumped. Potentially more pieces to come back in. Unfortunately, some to go out, but looking forward to it. What about you?
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. I'm buoyed. There is probably the only thing that really dulls it a little bit is the fact that just to run through the injuries quickly, Jason Horne-Francis is looking pretty promising that he'll be available. I mean, he's listed as available already, considering his shoulder strain on the weekend. Aliir is a test with that knee. Honestly, surprising. We didn't touch on that too much. We talked about the fact that he went out in the game, but the fact that his lateral movement is just he looked hobbled. And Aliir's a player that's pretty tough, so I was pretty surprised that he's a test for this week. I'd call that a less than 50% chance that he plays, but based on what I saw of him on the weekend. But I'm glad that I'm glad that it's not more serious. Big one for me, to be honest, and we've didn't actually talk about him too much during the review, but I think he's just been a constant plus point for us over the last 18 months, and we have talked about him plenty over the last 18 months. Ollie Wines out for a couple of weeks is a big one for me. Just on-field leadership, seniority, all those things. What he just provides as an option, his toughness and inside work and everything that he provides. That's a big loss for us, I think. So he's out for 1 to 2 weeks. Still not major. The fact he played out the game, by the way, just incredible, because I think he copped that injury apparently in the first quarter.
I had no idea.
No.
And then I was thinking like, oh, Ollie's had a bit of a quiet game. He still racked up I think it was 22 disposals in the end. But I was like, yeah, Ollie's been a bit quiet. He got into Jack Viney once, which was funny because they're obviously lifelong friends, but super competitive on the field. But yeah, and now it all makes sense.
Yeah. He still played okay. Like, his disposal efficiency was better than fucking Petrarca and Oliver. So with the knee injury. So yeah, very good stuff from Ollie. So yeah, no, that's the outs from our game on the weekend. The big, probably only one that's pertinent as far as the ones possibly coming back in. Lockie Jones is a test for this weekend, so that could potentially work in with the Aaliyah injury, and not that's the same like for like, but with different options available that could work in there. Yeah. We don't know, especially with how Lockie Jones played Jeremy Cameron prior to that injury.
Very true.
Yeah, there is options there. For Sydney, Tom Papley, and the two big ones for Sydney that could potentially be back that we didn't have to face last time around. Tom Papley and Errol Goulden are both tests to return to play. Both of them apparently fully trained for the team as they are coming off a bye week. So with Papley and Goulden having trained over the bye week, there's a likelihood that we see both of them, which is a big change to their side that we saw last time around. Obviously, we talked about Goulden's, and it's been a big talk of Sydney's travails this year is that Goulden has been missing, and he's running, some of the class that he provides. Papley, clearly we know what he can provide both up forward and a little bit around that high half forward kind of stuff as well. So there's two big guys to potentially come back in. Nothing much else on their front. Those are obviously the two big ones. So with that in mind, does that change anything for you, or are you still? I mean, we've got to be confident in what we've got, right? Like that's what I'm resting on at this point as we close out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we beat them at home quite famously with all of their pieces in place anyway. So, and we've had a good record against them with all of these pieces in place, except for the preliminary final.
Yeah.
Which, again, dark alleyways of my mind. Connor Rosie going back. Could have done that in the prelim in retrospect. And I know a lot of people calling for it.
Yeah.
But look, that's in the past. We got to move on. No, but my thoughts are that while Goulden and Papley may come back in, there is still quite a possibility that they'll be short of a gallop too. So they could equally turn it on. They're very, very talented players. But yeah, there is that chance. So them coming back in doesn't change how I feel. How they come off the bye will be interesting, whether they start flat or they start with intent like we did versus GWS off the bye. So these all come into it, but ultimately we're going in pretty well-priced favourites, and I think we deserve to be. Yeah. I think early selection call for me is that Jones comes in for Aaliyah. And was it Ollie Wines is the only other likely out because they expect JHF to come in. Yeah. That's probably the most interesting. It means that Jackson Mead will stay in to the chagrin of certain portions of the fan base. But then who comes in for Ollie Wines will be really interesting. Do they yo-yo Moraes back up? Do they give Lorenz a shot who had 14 disposals but 11 tackles against Woodville West Torrens? So doing some hard stuff. Ewan McKinley, another mid-season recruit, was second best in terms of fantasy points. And they actually put Dylan Williams in the middle against Woodville West Torrens, and he got 27 disposals to be fairly our best on ground. So the ruck situation, do they stick with the two, with Sydney having Hayden McLean and Brody Grundy? But again, Hayden McLean gets rotated forward, so I'm not sure if they would trust a ruckman to defend that, but we still would have ESAVA and Zerk Thatcher to cover for that resting ruckman. So interesting, a very interesting, the most interesting call for me would be who's replacing Wines, whether they go some new toys type stuff, or is that Dylan Williams just out of the box game gonna just give him the most surprising recall ever? I doubt it, but just looking at it now, I'm shocked by that.
Yeah, I mean, we know Dylan Williams has had a fair amount of history at the AFL level now, like with his, shock not recruitment to Port Adelaide, but recruitment into the one side at the AFL level with the backman role he played in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're back when, I remember when he got named, people were like, what the fuck are we doing? Because that was right in the untenable period of media conjecture. And then...
Because I think, he got picked, he played back, and then it was around that time we switched DBJ forward.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know what can happen. I don't believe that. I mean, obviously, it might help both Jackson Mead and Manny Liddy keep a spot in the side. And then it comes down to what happens outside of that. Hugh Jackson was sub last week. Does he retain his spot as sub, or does someone, Christian Moraes had more or less a best on ground effort last week as well. Shout out to the Sanford side who have got 1-3 on the bounce, by the way, and playing decent footy. So it's good to see them, because I often, some of the years in past where they've been really terrible or we've been okay, it's just like, whereas we're winning games, they're winning games. Woodville West Torrens also a team that are in the top 5 at the moment. So with the win against them in shit conditions, I was watching a bit of it as I was at work for the Sanford side. That's a good win for them. Like, it's not just them beating a side around them. It's a side.
Yeah, tough win.
Yeah, tough win. So good stuff for them. I'm really intrigued to your point about where we go, because again, our squad show on Thursday will be another one where there's multiple changes. We're not going to, I keep saying, I can't wait until there's one that we just have no changes. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder, like, does it happen this year? And gives us plenty to talk about, but it's also like, I'd like to go in unchanged at some point. But that is AFL footy. There's injuries. And obviously we have a lot of different guys pushing for selection. There's a lot of guys on our injury list, quality players. Jack Lukosius could be within the frame in the next 2 to 3 weeks as well. So lots of changes to continue, but hopefully to the point of getting to the point of being a better side than worse. But yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be really a nice afternoon down at Adelaide Oval on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to another couple of beers down there. Hopefully remembering what I ordered. Very funny. Just assuming I'd little story for me to finish off. I ordered Stone Pacific Ales at the bar, and they gave me super dries. I didn't even just think about it, and then gone up, drank them with Jamie, and he's just gone, "Oh, what did you get? Super dries?" I was like, "No, Stone Pacifics," and Jamie's giving me a funny look. I was like,
Stone and Woods, yeah.
Stone and Woods, yeah. And then Jamie's come back up and being like, "This is what they look like." And I was like, "Oh fuck, what were we drinking super dry?" It was like that. It was like that focused.
They're
on
much
the game.
more refreshing.
Yeah. That was like a sunshine on a rainy day moment. Like when I actually took a sip of one that was proper. Like I was like, "God, this is what this is." Because I was drinking them, and I was just like, "Oh, that was so focused on the game."
It's the SpongeBob rainbow.
Exactly.
Oh.
Pacific Ale. Yeah.
Beer's a beer though. At the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they all helped me get through the game on the weekend, and I'm looking forward to a few more this weekend. Cheers, Jamie. Great review. Loved going through that one. That was one of my favourite ones in recent times. It was just a really, really fun game to be a part of. Really fun one to review. Hopefully another one coming this weekend. Nothing more from me.
Absolutely. See you at the footy, guys. Thanks for listening and watching.
Down the pair.
Cheers, guys. Get in the pair.